dropping an absolute political bombshell. On a Monday morning at 9:07 a.m., Chrystia Freeland has resigned as Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister. And the resulting cascading reactions from every single major political player in the Canadian theater has shown us what we might actually see in the next 12 months within Canada. And the very first casualty of this political war, none other than MP Minister Sean Fraser, who, when asked why he chose to resign at the exact same time as Chrystia Freeland, he said,
on a Monday morning of the fall economic statement.
Look, I can't speak to the motivations that my colleague, Ms. Freeland, may have. I can only speak for myself. Truth be told, I had intended, though I'd made this decision for myself a few months ago when I was home recovering from a surgery that took place in early September. And I got a few extra weeks spending time with my kids at home. And it felt like it was where I was supposed to be. I realized very quickly that just because I was home didn't mean that my 8-year-old daughter in particular was necessarily home with me all the time. She's built a social life of her own. She's having sleepovers with her cousins. She's out playing in the neighborhood with her friends. And you come to realize that you're
saying that he made the decision months ago, but he never clearly stated why he chose to leave today, which is the 16th, which is exactly when Chrystia Freeland resigned, which is also exactly when the absolute chaotic explosion within the Liberal Party occurred. He never clearly states it, but this is essentially political speak for saying that he was ready to leave, but something happened behind the scenes to encourage him to leave right at the exact same time as Chrystia Freeland. And now before anybody creates any form of sympathy for Chrystia Freeland, who is the main character in this story, I want to remind everybody what happened during 2020, 2021, and 2022 when Chrystia Freeland was proudly pounding her chest saying how vaccine mandates helped this economy, how vaccine mandates helped Canadians, even after our closest allies stopped lockdowns, stopped vaccine mandates 1 to 2 years prior to Chrystia Freeland's government making the decision to lift all the mandates. And let's not forget how she treated the most patriotic Canadians who've walked on the face of this country in the past 10 years. And I'm talking about none other than the Freedom Convoy, the truckers who tried to protest for Canadian rights, for Canadian freedom, against the tyranny caused by the Trudeau regime and his deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland. Let's not forget that she literally wrote this weird handwritten note to the director of intelligence services, CSIS, claiming that we need a new playbook. This is at the height of the trucker convoy and the trucker protest, which we should all keep talking about, and I will never stop talking about it. She said, we need a new playbook. You need to designate this group as a terrorist group and seize the assets and imprison them. She wanted to call average Canadians who had fucking bouncy castles in Ottawa trying to protest for their rights, trying to protest against a tyrannical government. And she wanted to call them terrorists. Now, bring this back to today. The same tyrants are now scrambling to try to figure everything out. And we literally saw Trudeau sign on new finance minister, Dominic LeBlanc, after 3 different people refused to become finance minister. In Canada today, we technically had 3 finance ministers as a result of the political chaos caused by Chrystia Freeland and Sean Fraser's resignation today, as well as Justin Trudeau's terrible policymaking and politicking for the past 10 years. And nobody says this better than Pierre Poilievre when he was trying to explain the exact same thing.
Mr. Speaker, just to underline the chaos we're faced with here, the finance minister resigned the day she was to present the fall budget, which was going to contain a massive deficit overrun. The job then went automatically to the industry minister, who immediately resigned, like on the spot. which then went down the line, and the next person in order was the famous two Randys. And they're not available to do the job either. We're now left.
This is not a serious country. This is not at all a serious country because it's ran by unserious people. They had a responsibility and an obligation to you and I and to 40 million other human beings who call themselves Canadians. They had a responsibility today to present the fall economic statement, showing just how did they run the economy this year and how are they projecting that they're going to run the economy for the next 6 years. But instead, they do this political maneuvering to help maintain their grip on power. And patriotic Canadians like you and I have actually came across Trudeau today, just 2 hours ago, where he famously had this fucking crazy reaction. Watch this, watch this. This was in Ottawa.
You guys, clear path here. Clear path, please. Clear path. Clear path.
Watch out, guys. To stay in office.
No
You
bank.
failed Canada. You've ruined our country. You're done. Walk away. You don't have an ounce of your father's integrity. At least he walked in the snow. Ounce of your father's integrity.
Look at this reaction.
Walk away. You don't
Have a good night, sir. Now, this Canadian is a patriot. Not this Canadian. No. The guy in the back who is heckling. And it's hilarious how CTV used the word heckler instead of calling this individual an angry Canadian. And we get one of many different weird reactions by Justin Trudeau. And you want to see what's the weirdest of all? His speech that he did right after Chrystia Freeland resigned. And this was in front of major Liberal Party players, donors, and just individual members.
I love this country. I love this country. I love this country. I really do. I trust Canadians. There is
If anybody believes in micro expressions or likes to analyze politicians whenever they try to pretend like they're telling the truth, look at how he said, I trust Canadians. Look at how he said that.
I trust Canadians.
You see how angry he looks? Canadians. Typical narcissist. Typical.
There is no place I'd rather be than Canada, and it is the absolute privilege of my life to serve as your Prime Minister. Now, Canada is the best country on earth, but it's
Used to be.
not perfect.
Because of your policies for the past 10, 12 years.
That's why I wake up every single day thinking about how to make this nation work better.
Or trying to think about how to funnel money from his green slush fund into his friends' investment companies.
For all
Allegedly.
Canadians. That mission to consistently put in the work so that we're living up to our ideals
He nearly said, so living up to our DEI, but he said ideals.
and
Listen to
valuing
that.
up to our ideals
DEI.
and values, that's at the core of what makes us liberals. And it's why you show up here, even on the toughest days, as a party.
That right there is actually a signal that this was a very painful and tough day for Trudeau. This speech as a whole actually revealed a lot. And I recommend, if you have the sanity for it, watch the whole thing. This is just the opener of the speech. But within the speech, he actually talks about how the Liberal Party needs to have more donations than Pierre Poilievre so that they can stop the conservative Nazi movement that is taking Canada by storm. And another interesting thing is that this speech was essentially a grand, weird admission of guilt and defeat, because the Trudeau government and Trudeau himself understands that his time is extremely limited as Prime Minister. And right now, and I'm going to show you in a very short period of time, that he is now limited to only 3 options. And we're going to get to that in a bit. Now, obviously, Pierre Poilievre called for a non-confidence vote, which is happening right now as I'm recording this video. And I actually want to explain something. Should this non-confidence vote actually take place tonight, and let's say for some fucking reason Jagmeet Singh actually votes for an election, then what's interesting is that today is the 16th. Let's say that somehow tonight it passes. The election would take place in the next few weeks, and the inauguration of the next prime minister of Canada would be in late January. You know what else is happening late January? On the 20th, Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated. So it's possible, but it's extremely unlikely. It's possible that we see a brand new Canadian prime minister start his administration at the exact same time as Donald Trump starting his, meaning these two brand new administrations can essentially work in tandem together so that they can create a better union between America and Canada. And Pierre Poilievre was not the only leader who actually wanted to call for an election, because the leader of Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet, urges Prime Minister Trudeau to call an election as early as possible.
Is so important to lie. Minister of Finances, Vice First Minister, Prime Minister, is the end of this government. And that at the
is the end of this government. So even the leader of Bloc Québécois understands that the Trudeau government is collapsing. It's a sinking ship. And to minimize the damage for Canadians, he urges the Prime Minister to call for an election as early as possible. Even NDP Member of Parliament Julian says that his party will force an election in late February, early March.
In February and March, there's all options on the table mean the NDP will vote no.
This was shot
vote
today.
No confidence in the government in those 2 months on that timeline.
If we're talking the end of February and the beginning of March, and Mr. Trudeau has not stepped down, hasn't heeded that call from his own caucus, from his own cabinet, from all the opposition parties, then yes. So of course that would mean if we're coming up to a straight up non-confidence motion the end of February, early March, that's one of the tools that we have. And so there's
one of the tools that we have. Speaking of what's happening in late February, let's take a look at when Jagmeet Singh's pension kicks in. February 25th. One of the tools in the NDP tool of saving Canada, the NDP tool of looking like socialists but having Maseratis, Rolexes, expensive suits, bankrupting their own party because they don't know how to run an actual party. One of the tools is that they're able to call for an election when they see fit, or better said, when Jagmeet Singh gets his pension. Speaking of Jagmeet Singh, let's see just how he reacted whenever the media correctly hounded him, trying to see what he was supposed to think about Chrystia Freeland's recent resignation.
Mr. Singh, give us your thoughts on what's going on. Do you have confidence in the Prime Minister?
Well, what has become really clear, looking at the Liberals again and again, they're more focused on fighting themselves. And what we believe we need to do is fight for Canadians. And so we're seeing more and more examples of them fighting themselves, focus on themselves, instead of fighting for Canadians and focus on Canadians.
Criminals.
Do you think Trudeau needs to quit?
People are criminals.
I'll have a full press conference later on today. We'll have a full press conference later on.
Pierre Poilievre is calling for you to do your job and to
to do your job.
Down that you have the power. Are you going to do that?
We'll have a full press conference very shortly, and I invite you to come ask me.
I want you to actually pay close attention to what this journalist asked Jagmeet Singh. The very first question. Listen.
Mr. Singh, give us your thoughts on what's going on. Do you have confidence in the Prime Minister?
Do you have confidence in the Prime Minister? Do you have confidence in the Prime Minister? These journalists and politicians know how to ask each other questions, because by asking him, do you have confidence in the Prime Minister? Should Jagmeet Singh say no because he doesn't have confidence in Justin Trudeau, that means that his hypocrisy will already be tripled down. His hypocrisy would be 100% guaranteed, because with his own words, he would say he has no confidence in Justin Trudeau. So why should he vote against a no confidence vote? And the media didn't stop there, because later on that day, I guess later on today, he was getting hounded by the public and the journalists.
All tools, all options are on the table. People are hurting, people are struggling, and so all options are on the table.
People are hurting and struggling because of the government you prop up.
Just to clarify, you're calling for him to resign, but you are not willing to vote no confidence in his government? How do those two things connect?
All options are on the table.
That's not an answer.
All options.
That's not an answer. What does it mean for your support with the Liberals, though? How can you say he needs to resign, but then you're not telling us what you're going to do for non-confidence?
Telling you that all options are on the table.
Right.
Absolute criminal. Absolute criminal. The journalists are completely right. How can you say that all options are on table? You're calling for the Trudeau regime to end by Trudeau resigning, but you're not willing to call for an election because you want your pension. Aren't you a socialist? Aren't you fighting for Canadian workers? But no, your pension is much more important than 40 million people's lives and economic future. Even Doug Ford came out saying that there's nothing more important to these greedy politicians than collecting a pension. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that Jagmeet Singh is literally a crook who just wants a pension and does not care about your life, my life, or this country's future. I made a couple of videos in the past analyzing just why Jagmeet Singh is this gung-ho on his pension. And it boils down to basically because he's going to lose his main riding in BC, the one riding that the NDP party parachuted him into, because that used to be an NDP stronghold, an NDP fortress, but now it might flip blue. And on top of that, Jagmeet actually bankrupted the NDP party. They have no money. They have to take out loans. As a major political party, they have to take out loans because of the absolute ineptitude by Jagmeet Singh and the NDPs as a whole. Even Liberal MPs are all lining up, calling for Trudeau to resign. We saw MP Drouin, we saw MP Chad Collins, Patrick Whaler, Anthony Housefather, it's kind of a cool name, and Helena Yachuk. These are just some names. There are way more MPs in the Liberal Party who want to oust Trudeau. Now, why do they want to oust Trudeau? And that brings us to the ultimate outcomes for what we're going to see in the next 12 months, what I call Trudeau's options. There's only 3 options that Trudeau has to help save his own future, or at least try to steal a little bit more money. The very first option is calling an election. This is almost a 1% chance of actually happening, but should Trudeau call an election, we're going to see Pierre Poilievre automatically win and absolutely destroy the Liberal Party and lead to Trudeau's demise. We can also see Trudeau resign and leave the party as a whole, which would bring Carnage Carney, who is actually one of the main authors of the economic policies, which led to the $60 billion deficit that we see at the Fest statement today, and the $60 billion deficit that we're going to see for the next 6 years. 6 years, 60 billion every year. And that's a Liberal Party projection. God knows what the actual amount is. I can guarantee that it's way more than that. Going to the third option is Trudeau is the most likely option to just drag his heels. He will try to stay in power as long as physically possible, which means the most powerful man in Canada is therefore not Justin Trudeau, who's the prime minister, who's the head of the prime minister office. No, the most powerful man in Canada is Jagmeet Singh. Because should Trudeau drag his heels, the only person in this country that can remove Trudeau is Jagmeet Singh, who would call an election after he gets his pension. It's wild, man. How is that even possible that one guy can keep 40 million people hostage? But should Trudeau choose this option, we would see the absolute destruction of the Liberal Party, which would lead to Trudeau's demise.